Let me ask you about energy stocks then, and energy assets in general. We may be able to find value in some of them, according to some formulae at the moment. But is that important? Is value in that sense important with what we're seeing in the oil markets at the moment?
I think that's a very difficult call to make. So while we've seen a collapse of front-end oil prices, that now is propagating out further along the curve. And unless you can see a material pickup in demand, I find it difficult to see how oil prices, certainly over the shorter term, can move much higher from here. And at their current levels, let's face it, most oil producers are not actually making any money. So we would think that's a little bit early to take that position today.
We're seeing drops in not just oil prices, but some related commodities like zinc. We're also seeing drops in palladium. We're seeing drops in coffee, drops in milk prices. Are you concerned that we're seeing a real wave of disinflation or deflation here?
I think that's a reasonable argument to make. When you have a demand shock of the size that we have had, one of the consequences of that is actually a deflationary shock, not necessarily one, despite the economic support that economies are getting, that is inflationary. So I do think the risks here quite clearly are deflationary, and bond markets are pricing some of that in. To expect anything other than a deflationary shock from the huge demand shock that we've had, I think is naive.
Peter, you make the point in your notes that central banks, you make the point that central banks and governments can remove panic perhaps from markets and cushion communities, but they can't necessarily stop recessions from taking place. How deep do you expect this very unusual recession to be then?
Yeah, so first of all, I think I've seen many people refer to the recent government support and central bank support as stimulus. And I think that's wrong. What we're seeing at the moment is effectively a world economy on life support, and the patient is being supported by these extraordinary measures. Now, if those measures are successful and if the healthcare crisis can be resolved, very big ifs, then potentially what is today life support can turn into stimulus in the future. But at the moment, let's face it, what the Fed is trying to do, what the ECB is trying to do, the Bank of England and governments around the world, is to ensure that what is a very nasty global recession does not turn into a depression. And we just need to be very honest with ourselves and recognize that we're just at the very start of what is a particularly deep recession. Our hope is that it's deep, but it's over quickly. And while we might very well have that as our central scenario, you have to plan for what could happen if this were to go on for a little longer than many expect.